Ever wondered what a perfect crime would actually be like? Would it be like one of the many Hollywood heist movies, or would it be something completely strange? The story of D.B.Cooper or Dan Cooper has been talked about in popular media for almost 5 decades, with multiple suspects, many clues discovered, and yet, to this day, authorities are no closer to finding out the real identity of the mystery hijacker than they were back in 1971. Today, we'll explore the legend of the mysterious hijacker, D.B.Cooper. On the afternoon of November 24, 1971, the eve of Thanksgiving, Northwest Airlines Flight number 305 in Portland was scheduled to depart for Seattle. A nondescript man calling himself Dan Cooper approached the counter and bought himself a one-way ticket. Cooper was a quiet man who appeared to be in his mid-40s, wearing a business suit with a black tie and white shirt. After the flight took off, he ordered himself a drink and lit up a cigarette. He was seated in the last row, which was close to where one of the flight attendants, Florence Schaffner, was also seated. He handed a note to Schaffner calmly, and on that note, he wrote that he had a bomb in his briefcase, and told her to come sit next to him. The stunned stewardess did as she was told. He opened the briefcase to reveal what looked like sticks of dynamite, along with wires and a battery. Cooper had a demand: 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 unmarked bills, worth about $1.2 million in today's value, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle, to refuel the aircraft upon arrival. Once Schaffner informed the pilot, William A. Scott, about the situation, he immediately contacted Seattle-Tacoma Airport Air Traffic Control, which then informed the local and federal authorities. They then scrambled to secure the ransom amount from a federal bank, and the parachutes from a local skydiving school, in the next 2 hours. Flight attendant Tina Mucklow recalled that Cooper appeared familiar with the local terrain. She also mentioned that he was calm, polite, and well-spoken. He had even offered to request meals for the flight crew during the stop in Seattle. Quite unlike the popular stereotype of a plane hijacker. At 5:24 p.m., Cooper was informed that his demands had been met, and at 5:39 p.m. the aircraft landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The hijacker exchanged the flight's 36 passengers for the money and parachutes. During refueling, Cooper specified his flight plan to the cockpit crew: a southeast course toward Mexico City, at the minimum airspeed possible without stalling the aircraft, approximately 100 knots or 115 miles per hour, at a maximum 10,000-foot altitude. He further specified that the landing gear remain deployed in the takeoff/landing position, the wing flaps be lowered 15 degrees, and the cabin remain unpressurized. Cooper had clearly thought this out in advance. Once the refueling was complete, Cooper kept several crew members on board, and the plane took off again, ordered to set a course for Mexico City, at approximately 7:40 p.m. 2 F-106 fighter aircrafts were scrambled from McChord Air Force Base, and followed behind the airliner, one above it and one below, out of Cooper's view. After takeoff, Cooper told Mucklow to join the rest of the crew in the cockpit, and remain there with the door closed. As she was leaving, Mucklow observed Cooper tying something around his waist. That was the last time anyone saw him. At 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit, and the crew soon noticed a change in air pressure, indicating that the aft door was open. At approximately 8:13 p.m., the aircraft's tail section wobbled up and down, enough to force the pilots to bring the plane back to level flight. At around 10:15 p.m., the flight landed at Reno Airport, with the aft stairs still lowered. The FBI, along with state troopers, sheriff's deputies, and Reno police, surrounded the aircraft. But after an armed search, they realized that Cooper was no longer aboard. None of the crew members, nor the pilots of the planes following the jet plane, had seen Cooper jump, or could pinpoint a location where he could have landed. And so began one of the great unsolved mysteries in aviation history. The FBI launched what would become one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations in its history, known as Norjik, or the Northwest hijacking. Once they started searching the plane for clues, the FBI found Cooper's black clip-on tie, his tie clip, and 2 of the 4 parachutes. Authorities interviewed eyewitnesses in Portland, Seattle, and Reno, and all those who personally interacted with Cooper, and a series of composite sketches was developed. The FBI and local police quickly began questioning possible suspects, which numbered at 800 initially. But they narrowed down the list to 24 suspects. An Oregon man named D.B.Cooper, who had a minor police record, was one of the first persons of interest in the case. Though he was quickly ruled out as a suspect, a local reporter in his rush to meet a deadline, confused the eliminated suspect's name with the pseudonym used by the hijacker. This prompted more news outlets to publish the erroneous information, and the name D.B.Cooper became lodged in the public's collective memory. According to the flight crew's testimonies, Cooper would have exited the aircraft around 8:13 p.m., when the plane was over a heavily forested and mountainous area, some 25 miles north of Portland. And so the FBI mounted an impressive search operation using helicopters, airplanes, and ground troops. Due to the manual descriptions given by Flight Number 305's pilots, Cooper's drop zone or landing zone could not be pinpointed, as was evident in the experimental recreation of the hijacking carried out by the FBI. Ultimately, the search and recovery operation, arguably the most extensive and intensive in U.S. history, uncovered no significant material evidence related to the hijacking. Maybe Cooper didn't survive his jump from the plane. After all, the parachute he used couldn't be steered, his clothing and footwear were unsuitable for a rough landing, and he had jumped into a wooded area at night, a dangerous gamble even for a seasoned pro, which, evidence suggests Cooper was not. So, what happened to the hijacker? The only major physical evidence that was recovered were the black clip-on tie, a mother-of-pearl tie clip, and 8 filter-tipped Raleigh cigarette butts. The information about the tie and tie clip were not announced to the public for almost 20 years, when in 1991 it was revealed in the book, D.B.Cooper, The Real McCoy. At some time after the hijacking, the cigarette butts were lost. Later on, only 4 pieces of evidence, 2 definite and 2 potential, linked to D.B.Cooper turned up between 1978 and 2017. In November 1978, a placard printed with instructions for lowering the aft stairs of a Boeing 727 was found by a deer hunter near a logging road, about 13 miles east of Castle Rock, Washington, which was within Flight 305's basic flight path. On Sunday, February 10, 1980, 8-year-old Brian Ingram was camping with his family on the Columbia River, close to the assumed drop zone. He uncovered 3 packets of the ransom cash near the campfire site. The bills were disintegrated, but still bundled in rubber bands. FBI technicians confirmed that the money was indeed a portion of the ransom, 2 packets of $120 bills each, and a third packet of 90, all arranged in the same order as when given to Cooper. In 2017, a group of volunteer investigators uncovered what they believed to be potential evidence, what appeared to be a decades-old parachute strap in the Pacific Northwest. This was followed later in August 2017 with a piece of foam, suspected of being part of Cooper's backpack. Although these pieces of evidence were linked to D.B.Cooper, no progress was made due to them in the actual discovery of Cooper himself. Between 1971 and 2016, the FBI processed over 1,000 serious suspects, who included assorted publicity seekers and deathbed confessors, but nothing more than circumstantial evidence could be found to implicate any of them, all being linked by no more than conjecture or extremely dubious claims of responsibility. However, there have been some potential suspects who were given more consideration than the rest. Let's look at 3 of the most likely suspects that have made the news over the past 49 years. Suspect number 1, Robert Rackstraw, was a military veteran with parachute training who had several brushes with the law. He was dismissed as a suspect by the FBI, but in 2018, a fellow veteran said he'd decoded messages, allegedly sent by Cooper, that implicated Rackstraw. Before his 2019 death, Rackstraw at times made cryptic comments about the case, rather than denying involvement. Suspect number 2, Walter R. Reque, was a paratrooper and claimed he'd been a spy. Carl Lauren published a book in 2018 about his friend Reque. According to Lauren, Reque admitted to him that he was the missing hijacker. Reque supposedly taped a confession several years before he died, and swore Lauren to keep his secret until after his death. In those years, Lauren never considered taking the story to the FBI. Suspect number 3, Richard Floyd McCoy. A devout Mormon who skyjacked a Boeing 747, flying from Denver to Los Angeles, diverted the plane to San Francisco, picked up a $500,000 ransom along with 4 parachutes, sent the plane back up after refueling with instructions to fly east, and bailed out of the plane in mid-flight near Provo, Utah. This occurred on April 7, 1972, roughly 5 months after D.B.Cooper's heist in the skies between Portland and Seattle. Though the circumstances of McCoy's robbery were eerily similar to Cooper's, when questioned about D.B.Cooper after his arrest, McCoy refused to confirm or deny anything. While the FBI officially declared McCoy's skyjacking a copycat crime, the similarities in MO and other physical evidence have convinced many of the investigators who looked at McCoy's case that he was the man called Dan Cooper. Ultimately, the investigations into these suspects and many others who claim to be Cooper have failed to conclusively prove anything. All the speculation about Cooper's true identity sparked a massive interest in the American public, who were craving for more on the fascinating story of Cooper's heist. He became somewhat of a local hero, who had taken on the system, and won. References to Cooper have been made in many TV shows, films and documentaries such as Twin Peaks, Prison Break, as well as the 1981 film The Pursuit of D.B.Cooper, the 2004 film Without a Paddle. Nearly half a century's worth of books, TV shows, comics, films, songs and festivals have been devoted to completing the puzzle, or have played off the myth of Cooper. Leonard Nimoy's In Search of TV series took on Cooper in the 70s, right alongside episodes devoted to the Bermuda Triangle, and the Loch Ness Monster. And more recently, the hijacking became the subject of HBO's new documentary film The Mystery of D.B.Cooper. The intriguing mystery surrounding Cooper's hijacking and escape might very well never leave the collective consciousness of the American public. And even though the FBI has officially closed the case in 2016, as long as there are new clues being brought forward by citizen sleuths and private investigators, the mystery will continue to intrigue us. So did Cooper die in the jump? Or did he truly manage to evade authorities for almost half a century? What do you think happened to Cooper? Thank you for watching, and we hope you found our video interesting. Like, comment and subscribe for more fascinating unsolved mysteries.